こんにちは、ゆうこ先生です。今日のレッスンは教科書元気のレッスン9からです。Today's lesson is from lesson 9 in the textbook 元気 volume 1. The most important grammar in this lesson is the plain past conjugation for Japanese verbs. I recommend taking notes as you watch this lesson, okay?By the end of this video, you should be able to make the た form and the なかった form by yourself. I have been a Japanese language teacher for many years, and now I offer Japanese online courses to students all over the world. If you are interested, please check my school website at smilenihongo.com/class.In this lesson, we are going to learn short form or plain form in the past tense for Japanese verbs. Plain forms are used in informal speech. When you speak to someone in informal speech, you need to use plain form instead of mass form. The plain form is also used to create other expressions such as I think that or she said or he said.So far, you have learned plain form in the present tense back in lesson 8, but now we are going to learn the past tense. Be sure to review what you have learned in lesson 8 about plain negative form, ない form. For RU verbs in the negative, you change the ending RU to ない. For U verbs in the negative, you change the ending vowel U to a and add ない. For irregular verbs, you have to memorize the negative forms. する becomes しない and 来る becomes 来ない. This is what we have learned so far. Now in this lesson, lesson 9, we are going to learn how to say the past tense in plain form. Did and didn't.Let's begin with RU verbs, since this is the easiest group to conjugate. So far, you know how to say eat and don't eat in plain form. 食べる and 食べない. Now let's learn how to say ate in plain form. These are the example RU verbs that I'm going to use. 食べる 教える忘れる出かける I'm going to give you the past tense for each verb here, okay? See for yourself if you can figure out how to convert RU verbs in plain form into the past tense. Ate is 食べた Taught is 教えた Forgot is 忘れた Went out is 出かけたHow do you convert plain RU verbs into the past tense? It's simple, right? Right. You simply change the ending RU to た. That's it. That's how you conjugate plain RU verbs to the past tense. Now we are done with the RU verbs. Let's move on to U verbs.As always, the conjugation for U verbs is not as simple as RU verbs. Just like when we learned how to convert them into the plain negative form, the ending letter matters here, okay? Please pay attention to the examples I list here and then see if you recognize any patterns. I'm going to use these U verbs as examples. 読む、買う、話す、聞く、入る。And here are the past tense. Read is 読んだ。Bought is 買った。Spoke is 話した。Listened or asked is 聞いた。Entered is 入った。 Do you notice something here? Take a look at the past tense for these U verbs. They look kind of familiar, don't they? Right. They look similar to the te forms. The only difference is that they have ta or da instead of te or de. So that's the formation rule for U verbs in plain past. You apply the te form conjugation to the verb, and then change the ending te to ta or de to da. So to conjugate U verbs into the plain past, it's crucial that you have completely mastered the te form conjugation. So what is the plain past form for the verb 会う and 泳ぐ? Right. 会う is 会って in the te form, so the plain past form will be 会った。会った。泳ぐ in te form is 泳いで, so the plain past will be 泳いだ。泳いだ。Now we are done with plain past for RU verbs and U verbs. We have one more group which is irregular verbs, but for this group, you actually do the same as you did for U verbs. You simply apply the te form conjugation. する is して in te form, and then 来る is 来て in te form. Therefore, to come up with the plain past form, you simply change the ending te to ta. The plain past for する is した、した。And for 来る is 来た、来た。So now we have covered this much for each verb group. Do, don't, and did. Now, let's cover how to say didn't, the past negative for plain verbs. This one is simple and the verb group doesn't matter for past negative, okay? All you have to do is to change the ending ない in the negative form for all verb groups into なかった、なかった。That's it. So the RU verb 食べない don't eat becomes 食べなかった、食べなかった for didn't eat. The U verb 飲まない don't drink becomes 飲まなかった、飲まなかった for didn't drink. The irregular verb しない don't do becomes しなかった、しなかった for didn't do, and 来ない don't come becomes 来なかった、来なかった for didn't come. Here's the entire summary of plain verb conjugation for all the groups. Now you can say do, don't, did, and didn't in plain form for all the Japanese verbs. Be sure to watch this lesson a few times until you feel comfortable with plain verb conjugation. こんにちは、ゆうこ先生です。日本語オンライン学校スマイル日本語アカデミーで日本語を教えています。I have been teaching Japanese for over 20 years, and now I have my online Japanese school. If you are interested in learning Japanese with me, please check the available courses in the description box below. I look forward to having you as my student. 皆さんと一緒に日本語を勉強するのを楽しみにしています。ではまた次のレッスンで会いましょう。